Hi, my name is Mhako. I'm the founder and curator at earGROUND, Africa.
Okay, my name is Clive Mukundu. I'm a music producer and a musicologist.
Great. We just decided to come together. I come from a different generation. He's from a different generation. Different interests, different profession. I'm more into the media, promotion, and just working in the creative space. And Mono is a music producer, a musicologist, and he does so many things. So we wanted to have like this very informal conversation, but talking about what needs to be done, at different levels in the music industry. Because a lot of the times, I think you'd agree with me, Mono, that we're always pointing at problems. We're always pointing at this, chakat. But not so many times that we are saying, okay, this is the situation, but what could be the best alternative? Yes.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true.
So we decided to bridge the gap, because also there's a lot of conflict between the new generation and the old generation.
Yeah, there's always fights.
But when I look at the American music industry, or just the most progressive music industries, I find that their growth is premised on continuity from one generation to the other. There's always passing on. So the new generation always talks about, okay, we started our music from here, or we learned it from this generation, or we adapted this and we started transforming it to ABC. If you look at Mama Piano, they will tell you that the history does not start with now. It started off with, all the Bakanga, the Afro jazz, and now, Digong, Kwaito, Gom, and so forth. So I feel that for us as a music industry in Zimbabwe, we need to bridge the gap. We need to start tapping into each other's knowledge and wisdom. Like you were telling me just before the conversation that you have had to transition from
the analog
to digital
way of doing things to the digital way of doing things. Yeah, I like your point, because if you look at countries where music is prospering, like the examples that you gave of America, South Africa, Nigeria, there's always an element of passing on to the next generation. And like I always say, the new broom sweeps better than the old broom. So it's just a matter of finishing. So what happens is the older generation, they bring in the wisdom and the wisdom and the direction, and the new generation has got the ideas. These days we can say the new generation has got the ideas and the technology. Yeah. So I think we need to pass on knowledge and stop this idea of treating each other as adversaries.
Yeah. And before breaking into our conversation, I was thinking the other day that artists like Bundu Boys, artists like Tuku, and so many artists that went before this generation that actually managed to travel and tour internationally before there was internet. How they managed to do it, and a lot of them possibly didn't really go to school that much. My grade 7, my form 2, my form 4, maybe they're not so many of them, but they actually managed to do that. And I was thinking that, what if we had books that were written? What if we had films? What if we had documentaries that would trace, that would show you the story of Bundu Boys from when they started touring, even before as a band, and how much that could actually do to the next generation of artists? Because I think my generation and the next generation, we're always thinking, want to be the first, want to start, want to be
That's a very good point, because even if you look at other races, wealth and information is always passed from the previous generation.
True.
If you see a rich white man right now, or a rich Jew, they will tell you that the wealth that I'm enjoying was created by my great-great-great-grandfather that he had never seen. I'm not going to picture, so it came from these guys. But coming to the issue that you raised, I think in Zimbabwe we've got a serious problem when it comes to documenting our history and our information. Because every time we always have people from outside come and write our stories, and always those stories end up being distorted. And when they are distorted, we become angry. Information, but what are you doing about it? It's the same thing with me around 2010 when I looked on YouTube. I couldn't find anybody teaching Zimbabwean guitar. There was a lot of rock tutorials even Rumba tutorials from DRC, a lot of tutorials from South Africa, but there was nothing from Zimbabwe. And then I saw one guy, I think it was a white guy from, I don't know, some European country.
Yes.
Maybe he stayed in Zimbabwe for some time, and he was trying to teach Zimbabwean guitar with totally wrong information.
Wow.
So at first I got angry, and then I said, but what am I doing about this? Because there's nothing on Chimurenga guitar, there's nothing on Sungura guitar. So from that time I started doing my own tutorials, and they gained traction. And I'm sure you know, when I was invited to the States in 2018, it was because of those videos. Wow. So it's a very good thing to do, to document our things for the future generation. And one thing that we have to stop is to always think about money. Because every revolution, when there's a revolution, every time there's a revolution around the world, it's always done by people who are doing things pro bono, not doing it for money, but thinking of the next generation. But I think we've got an issue in Zimbabwe where every time you try to do something, you start thinking, how much am I getting out of this? Or if somebody asks you to give them information, you just think maybe this guy is making some money out of it. So what am I going to benefit? And then who suffers is the next generation.
Interesting, because I mean, you're one person who's managed to document your own story. Very interesting. You know, when I got into your studio and I was looking on the wall, there's a poster from 1988 when I was just 4 years old. No, I was 6 years old. And then I see another one also, Safiri Mazikatire, and I see every now and
that
again.
one you were not even born yet.
I was not even born. But a lot of these amazing stories, you know, I was in New Orleans at one time, at Satchmo, Jazz Fest, and I was shocked that they were talking about Louis Armstrong, because it's a festival that is developed around Louis Armstrong, and there's a museum that celebrates Louis Armstrong. And they were talking about his visit, and there were pictures of him visiting Zimbabwe. And then there was a mention of Skokiana. And I was like, this sounds familiar. And they were like, yeah, it comes from Zimbabwe. You know, one legendary artist, you know, Sarurwa, you know, created this song, and it actually got this big.
And I bet you a number of people watching this program are hearing about that song for the first time. That song has got more than 50 versions.
Wow.
And Louis Armstrong is one of the people who did the first versions. Wow. When he came to Zimbabwe, he went and did that. Oh, okay, you can carry on.
No, I mean, it's quite interesting because, you know, a lot of these stories are lost because we do not document.
Yeah,
so we always feel like, oh, Trukmashure. I mean, there is obviously things that we need to improve, but there's also a lot of amazing stuff that has happened in the past that is legendary, that people, if they knew, if this information was easily accessible, it would actually make a lot of difference.
That's very true.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, our conversation is almost going to be focusing, it's going to be focusing on what the positives and the do's, what somebody needs to do if they're working in the creative sector. And I think a starting point was around why does our music in Zimbabwe not pay? You wrote the book Poor and Famous, which is one of my all-time favorite books, because it also made me start thinking about my own profession and thinking about how I can monetize. Yeah,
thank you very much. First of all, I need to make you listen to this voice note that I received from somebody. This guy is a fan of mine.
Okay.
So you know how urban myths are created, where people start to create stories. Some of the stories are very nice stories. They'll be saying very good things about you, but unfortunately, those things are not true. Let's listen to this one.
Blazo yakurwa gitara ita mari. Toni beg rimwe risingaiti mfeshe. Anonzi Mukundu. Fese ranga rimwe rombo zvaro.
Which is true.
But ndo vanhu vanokwanisa testimony kuti Mwari anosumudza varombe kubva muvhu. Izvozvo ukaona dheng raanaro Borodeo nemota dzaanadzo, studio yanayo chichi. Munhu uye anorwa gitara zvekuti anoedzwa kana kumurwa mamashow kuEurope.
So this guy says, now I've got a very big house, a mansion in Borodeo.
So much money.
Yeah, I wish that was true. He says, I've got a lot of cars and expensive cars. I wish that was true, because I drive an ex-Jap. I don't have that money. And the reason why he says so is because most people when they see you on TV, when they see you in newspapers, they think you are making a lot of money. But unfortunately, it's not like that in Zimbabwe. I remember
But
one
isn't
time...
it supposed to be like that?
It is supposed to be like that, because if you look at countries where music is very progressive, like the countries that we mentioned before, fame is attached to money. But in Zimbabwe, many times it's the opposite. I remember the other time I was on radio and this presenter asked me, how come you are a music producer but you don't have the type of money that people like Kanye West have? And I said to him, how come you are a presenter, you are in the media fraternity and you don't have the same type of money as Oprah Winfrey and the likes of Steve Harvey? And then he was saying, I know what is different. I said it's the same, because we are in the same economy.
Yeah.
So I think it's a very good topic to discuss why music doesn't pay in Zimbabwe. In your own view, what do you think could be the problem?
I think it's because a lot of the times you find people are talented and they discover their talents, they nurture them, they develop them so well. But the business side of things, it's a subject that is too taboo. You know how money sounds like vulgar in Zimbabwe?
Yeah. True.
Even in any business, this is the moment where people start to say, okay, like it becomes a bit difficult of a
like
subject.
It's witchcraft.
It's like it's witchcraft to say, okay, so how much are you going to pay for this? It's like, at times you can even offer a service to somebody and feel so ashamed to even ask them for a fee. You know, not because you don't value your work, but because you just feel like it's offending. So I think we grow up in a society where the conversation about money is not a conversation that is done at family level. It's not done, at a societal level. People love to talk about money just in the sense of they've made money, but nobody wants to actually talk about legit money and how to make money through legit means. To say, look, here's my business. And so for music, a lot of musicians, because not many of them have made money, but because people assume that they've money, then they decide not to actually talk about their financial gains. So if they make it, and then they also attract a lot of punitive action from the tax authorities and others. So it's a very tricky one. I mean, I was actually talking about one concert, and I was like, how much money was made? And nobody wants to talk about it. But you find
very taboo.
It's very taboo. But if you look at South Africa, if you look at America, they will tell you that this show that was done at HICC, they made so much money. This show that was done at the Radiant Sports Club, they made so much money. Yeah. And the artists can actually talk about it, and also they inflate freely, and say, I made so much money. But it's a subject that people don't talk about.
It's very taboo.
Yeah, so I think it's a lack of financial literacy. At school, how many of us are taught financial literacy? Even your teacher will not be understanding the subject. We're just taught how to do accounts and so forth. But to really understand the language of money and how to develop. So we hear it from motivational speakers and people that actually make money from people that don't know how to make money because they're just good at speaking. So they speak, they make you believe, and you give them money. and those are the people that are on radio. Those are the people that are on TV. Those are the people that are in churches or in spaces who speak about money. And they will say it in a way that you will believe them that you're going to give more money.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, like we said today, we don't want to dwell on the problems a lot. We want to dwell more on the solutions.
Yeah.
I just wanted to pass through and mention such things like our demographics, because they also play a part.
Yeah. We don't have good numbers.
Yeah, we don't have good numbers. Our numbers are just 15 million. Because if you look at all countries that are making it internationally, South Africa has got more than 60 million, Nigeria has got more than 200 million, USA has got more than 300 million. And when we talk of USA, their market also includes Britain, because most of them, in fact, USA was a colony of Britain, the same thing with Australia. So it's sort of like the same market. But still, my point is, even though we have such disadvantages, there are still ways of making money in Zimbabwe.
True.
First of all, you need to understand that our artists need to understand that music is not about your talent, it's about the strategy. That's why we have a lot of artists who are not good singers, but they are making it.
True.
So I always advise artists, if you are entering the music business, First of all, you must know that it's not ready-made money. You need to fight for it. You need to work for it. And then number two, you need to live within your means. Yeah. And then number three, you need to be business-minded so that you don't just dwell on kugona kwako. Because we've got a lot of artists who think that once just because I voice and Maria to flow in. So that's why every time I'm given an opportunity to speak, I always tell youngsters, but if you're in school, don't run away from school and say I can sing chikora chisnabasa. You still need your school. Make music your side hustle first until the side hustle pays more than the main hustle. Then maybe you can make it the main hustle. Then what used to be the side hustle or the main hustle now becomes the side hustle. So I think that's a
and also that, I mean, making money in the music industry is not about making hits.
Yeah, that's true.
I know artists that do not have a single hit in the sense of like Zimbabwean hits, but they are known internationally. Strategy. They know where their market. So I think as an artist, you need to identify your market. Where is the market? Because there's somebody who's making music that appeals to 5,000 people, and those 5,000 people are enough to sustain his business. That's sufficient. And then there's an artist who thrives on numbers because possibly his numbers will be able to afford $1 to attend his show. So
that topic you've raised is a very crucial topic because I always tell people you need to know which strategy you are using. Because some people will be using strategy A and expecting the results from strategy B. For example, when you talk of numbers, if you ask people who run restaurants, they will tell you that they prefer jazz artists to artists like dancehall artists.
Yeah.
Then if you ask them the reason behind it, they tell you that with jazz artists they can have something like 20 or 30 customers in the restaurant, and they'll spend a lot of money.
Wow.
But if you bring dancehall artists, you have a lot of numbers, but no sales.
And when they leave, things are broken.
Yeah, you see, things are broken, some cell phones are missing, and so forth. So I'm not dissing dancehall, but I'm just saying every genre has got its own advantages, its own disadvantages, its own pros and its own cons. So as an artist, you need to really think about which strategy you are using, which genre you want to use, and the pros and cons of that genre, so that you work, which is your usirimsag.
And also to think about revenue streams, not to just focus on the stage, because I think our music industry in Zimbabwe is more focused on getting money through the gate takings, right? I've seen artists that travel. The other time I was with Mhako, they were in Germany, and during their performance, they actually had merchandise, they had bags, they had t-shirts, they had their CDs. They were actually selling copies of CDs from their music, and they sold them all right after the concert. So that can actually be an alternative revenue stream, but also to think about other skills that you can learn, because now things are changing so fast. So you can be a good musician, but possibly you could also learn how to make adverts, to make music for film, to make music for not just mainstream performances, but other ways that allow you to also make more money. Because if you're just waiting to get booked, to get on stage and perform, the money may not be enough. And also online, there are ways to actually make money online. I hear people complaining and crying, so. But if you learn one way, someone can actually make beats and be selling them online and just survive off that.
Very true.
Yeah. So I think with that, we're going to go into like our next topic. We've got so many more topics. I hope we're going to exhaust them all. But yeah, we'll take a small break and we're coming right after this. My name is Mhako. I was about to say my name is Monomko.
It happens.
So we'll be coming right back after this.